Hello, welcome back to another video. It's Grace, and today I'm bringing you my June TBR, but it's not just my June TBR because I am taking part in a readathon, and that is going to be the Olympics readathon that's being hosted on the Shelf Space Discord. So I don't have any part in the actual hosting of this readathon, but I will leave a link to the Shelf Space Discord in my description where you can sign up, and I'll just briefly go over what this readathon actually is. So basically, the wonderful mods over at Shelf Space are organizing this, and the Olympics readathon is based on prompts that have to do with the 16 gods and goddesses of Olympus, although I don't think they all actually are, courtesy of me watching Alan's video. Apparently they're not all Olympians, but that's okay. So each god has a prompt associated with them, and if you pick up a book that meets those prompts, you'll earn points for your team in the readathon. So that's a very simplified explanation, but if you are interested in this and you happen to not already be part of Shelf Space, again, you can click the link to the Discord in the description, and there is an entire channel on that Discord dedicated to information about the readathon, questions and answers, and just a whole bunch of people chatting about the books they plan to read as well, so it's really fun. So, the fact that there are 16 prompts as part of this readathon means that there are lots of books to recommend, and lots that I'm putting on my TBR as well. So I'm actually a little bit out of breath from moving all of these stacks around. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the prompts one by one, say what the prompt actually is, and then say either what I've put on my TBR for that prompt or a recommendation of a book that I think could fill that prompt. So let's get right into it. The first prompt in the readathon is going to be ZEUS, which is read a book that features a kingdom or a patriarchy. And so there are quite a few books really that could fit this, because kingdoms are pretty common in European-inspired fantasy, and I mean, unfortunately, the patriarchy is just common. But the book that I am planning to read for this prompt is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. And so I've been really excited to get to this for a while, and what I understand, the main character in Assassin's Apprentice is a king's bastard, and so there you have it. You have a kingdom. That's what our main character is involved in this book. So again, plenty of books that fit kingdom and patriarchy, I'm sure, but Assassin's Apprentice is what I'm going with for this one. The second prompt is Poseidon, read a book with water, so that could be oceans, lakes, rivers, etc. And there are plenty of books that will fit this one as well, because basically there just has to be water present. And so I am actually not filling this prompt in my TBR, but I do have recommendations for it. So one of those is going to be Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch. And this is the second book in the Gentleman Bastards, coming after The Lies of Locke Lamora. So that is something to keep in mind, that this is a second book, but it does take place, a bulk of it, on ships and on the seas, so that fits perfectly into the water prompt. And another book, just in a different vein, still fantasy, but another one that comes to mind is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, because you have the spooky, whimsical, magical pond/ocean that appears in that book as well. Those are two recommendations for that prompt. The third prompt is Hades, read a book with the undead or a ghost theme. And so the book that I am planning on reading for this prompt is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. And the short synopsis of this book is that a trans boy and his Latinx family have trouble accepting his gender. And so he attempts to I believe, to summon the ghost of his cousin to help his family accept his gender identity, but he ends up summoning the wrong ghost and chaos ensues. This is about summoning ghosts. It very much fits the undead and ghost theme. And I also have a recommendation for this one, and so I have a dedicated review for this book as well, so if you've watched that, you probably know what I'm going to say, but that's going to be A Lot's Away by Darcy Littlebadger, because this book does feature a main character who can communicate with the dead and who can also like raise ghosts, raise spirits. So this very much fits that prompt as well. It would be a great choice. It's a great book. So the fourth prompt is Hestia, read a book with the found family trope. And this one, the one that I put on my TBR for this, was Kings of the Wild. And so I haven't read this, so I don't know for sure, but it strikes me as having the found family trope because from what I understand, it's about like a band of mercenaries and they have essentially retired and they're kind of washed up, but they come back together for one last mission. And so they're obviously not blood relatives, and in that sense, since they're such like great friends, I think that this would fit into that. So I guess we'll see, but this is what I'm hoping for that one. And a recommendation that I have for that one is, shocker, The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I'm sure you've heard everyone and their mother talk about, but this book is truly the sweetest, and honestly, I'm tempted to just fit it in as a reread and read it again next month because I loved it so much. But I'm sure you've heard everyone talk about this book, but for found family, this is like the first thing that is like a siren blaring in my head. The fifth prompt is HEPHAESTUS, which I am not sure at all whether I am saying correctly, but HEPHAESTUS is to read a book with fire on the cover or in the title. And so the one that I personally am going to be choosing for this is The Fires of Heaven, which is the fifth book in the Wheel of Time series. And this is, I mean, it's a recommendation if you can read this book, but it's hard to recommend when it's like right smack in the middle of an extremely long series. So this is my next entry into the Wheel of Time that I need to read, so the timing works out great. And so that's why I have this on my TBR, because obviously it has fire in the title. There are lots of books that can work for this prompt. One that is probably going to be a popular choice, I would think, is Fireborn by Rosaria Munda, which I actually have on my TBR for this month, which is why I didn't put it in my June TBR, but you never know. We'll see what happens. The sixth prompt is Dionysus, which again, I am not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but Dionysus is to read a book with a red or white cover, which is obviously very self-explanatory. It's not really one that like necessarily lends itself to recommendations because it's not like you don't know the contents of the book, you literally just need to look at the cover. But the one that I've chosen for myself on my TBR is Jade War by Fonda Lee. And so this was actually a buddy read this month over in Shelf Space, and so I debated putting it on my May TBR, but I did think since I want to read it anyway, it has a red cover, it fits very well into that prompt. So Jade War by Fonda Lee for me for a red cover. The seventh prompt is Hermes, read a book involving travel, vacation, or a quest. And so this is maybe a little bit ironic that I didn't choose this for Poseidon, but I thought that the second Percy Jackson book, which is The Sea of Monsters, would fit very well in here because I asked one of my friends and she said that generally the Percy Jackson books do all involve a quest of some sort, like the same general format. So based on reading the first one, I can tell that this is going to have some questing in it. And it's just a nice, light little one that I can stick in between some heavier reads, hopefully, so I think that it'll be perfect for this. The eighth prompt is Artemis, to read a book with moon or night in the cover, on the cover, or in the title. Words are hard. So I don't have one on my TBR for this, but I actually just finished the Midnight Library, which has night in the title, so it fits this prompt. And the setup for this book is we follow a character named Nora who, when she dies, goes to the Midnight Library, which is essentially a place between life and death where you aren't alive or dead, where you sort of get to peruse potential lives that could have been had you made other decisions. This would definitely be one that fits for Artemis, and it is also a pretty short, light read, so this could also be fit in between some chonkers if you have some of those on your TBR. The next prompt, the 9th, is Apollo, and that is to read a book in a non-traditional format, whether that is a graphic novel, written in verse, a novella. And so the one that I have chosen for this is a novella, and I actually only own it within this bad boy, Arcanum Unbounded, and so that is going to be The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. That is a novella, so that will also be nice just to like motivate myself to actually get to it, because I've wanted to read some stuff in Arcanum Unbounded for a while, but it just seems to keep getting pushed to the side when I'm reading other novels, so that'll be a great opportunity to do that with the Emperor's Soul novella in June. So the 10th prompt on the list is Aries, to read a military-centered fantasy or sci-fi book. And for this, I have chosen The Rage of Dragons. I have been meaning to read this for so long, and based on what I've heard, it is very military heavy. And for the amount of time that I've had this book and like the amount of hype that I've heard for it, I really only have the most vague of ideas about what this book is actually about. Essentially, I think that our main character is part of a lower class in this society, and he trains in order to, like, maybe be part of an uprising. I don't want to get that wrong, but I think that the pivotal part is that the training is in the military of some sort, and so I think that this will fit well into the Aries prompt about reading something that's military-centered. Okay, the 11th prompt is Aphrodite, and that is to read a book with a beautiful cover. And so this is one of the most subjective prompts, like, you just have to think that the book's cover is beautiful and it can apply to this. But the one that I have chosen is Mythology by Edith Hamilton, the 75th anniversary edition, because I just could not resist. I think that this is gorgeous, and there's also some beautiful artwork in here, if I can. So, like, for example, this is what one of the pages looks like. Honestly, the whole book is just beautiful. And like I said, tons of books could fit into having a beautiful cover. But I just thought that based on the theme of the readathon being gods and goddesses, that this would be like a perfect book subject matter-wise to pick up in June. So the last of this row is Hera, and that is to read a book that features a queendom or a matriarchy. And I don't have one for this on my TBR, and shockingly, I couldn't really think of any, and they might just be escaping me because that happens. But the one that I settled on is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, and so if you're not already planning on reading The Wheel of Time, this is a little bit of a tough sell, because I don't think that many people want to just like simply start a 14-book series with no forethought whatsoever. I mean, maybe some people do, but the fact is that I think that with the Aes Sedai and with like the women's circle and how some of the smaller villages work in this world, there very much is like a matriarchy, and there also is a queen of one of the countries in this book, and so like you definitely have that, and it fits very well into this prompt. It's just that I probably wouldn't recommend the first book in such a long series if I had any other ideas, but I actually don't. So, you know, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan does fit very well if you are so inclined. Okay, so we're getting down to the last few, and I only actually have a couple more in physical copy, but before that, the 13th prompt is Demeter, and that is to read a book with food on the cover. This is actually pretty tough. There's been a lot of discussion about what constitutes food, other than the obvious, but like it's surprisingly hard to find food on the cover of fantasy books. So my idea for this is actually a book that I am not going to have in physical format at all. I'm hopefully going to get it from the library, and that is going to be the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. And the reason that I chose this is because I already knew that I wanted to read it, and I immediately thought of those bloody oranges on the cover, and they fit perfectly. And they are an actual food. There's no question about that. Although, as long as people are playing within the spirit of the rules, I don't think that anyone is going to mind if you consider something food. But anyway, yes, I am very excited to read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires for that prompt. The 14th prompt is Athena, and that is to read a book with political intrigue. And so for this, I have Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, which is the second book in the First Law trilogy. And so this kind of hinges on the fact that I have The Blade itself on my May TBR, and so for that reason I put the second book in this spot. But if I don't manage to get to The Blade itself, then this could easily turn into The Blade itself, because I'm pretty sure that every book in the First Law trilogy does have political intrigue, and that I could kind of swap those out without any consequence. So we'll see how it goes. One recommendation that I have for that one is The Well of Ascension, which is the second book in the First Era Mistborn trilogy. So again, that is the second book in a series, but if you happen to have read The Final Empire and are looking for a reason to continue on with that series and you've been pushing it off, The Well of Ascension is very heavy on political intrigue, so I think that that would be a great fit for that prompt. The second to last prompt is EOS, and again, I don't know whether I'm saying that right, but EOS is to read a book that is the first in a series or a duology. And so the one that I have chosen for this is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. I am super excited to get to this series because everyone says such fantastic and interesting things about it. This is the first in a trilogy, or at least there are 3 books out right now. I think that it is a finished trilogy, but I'm not 100% on that. But again, this is the first book. I am very, very excited for it. Now, the final prompt on this list is Nyx, and that is to read a book that is the last in a series or a duology. And so I don't actually have anything for this on my TBR because right now I am mostly like in the middle of series or just starting them. So I am not going to be in a position, I don't think, to actually read the final book in a series. And I don't have any recommendations for this one either. Well, okay, it's not that I don't have recommendations, it's just that everyone is going to be in the middle of different series, and so it's again a very subjective prompt in the sense that like no one book is going to fit for everyone. You're not just going to be picking up the last book in a series if you haven't read the series. That's, you know what I'm saying? So that is a little bit of a boring note to end on, but I'm really excited for this readathon. There's no way that I'm going to read 12 books, but I like to give myself options. So that is my TBR for next month, and it'll probably change if we're being totally honest. But if you are interested, again, in the readathon, go check out the Shelf Space Discord link in my description. So again, the deadline to sign up for this readathon is May 24th, and like I said, I'm not part of the people running it, but I think that this readathon is going to be so much fun. I am so looking forward to it, and I am just so grateful to the mods of Shelf Space and Jessie from Jessie May and Alan from the Library of Alexandria for running this Discord, because I've only just recently joined it and it is such a fun and welcoming community. So I am so grateful to them for creating that space. And so yeah, that is my TBR for the Olympics readathon in June 2021. And that is all for this one, so thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, like if you liked the video, subscribe if you would like to see more from me, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!